Hello, everyone. I'd like to start off by saying thanks to everyone who's able to attend today's webinar, Migrating from Parse, Understanding Your Options. Before we begin, I'd like to briefly review the format and some logistics. Today's webinar will be approximately 30 minutes long with 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A following the presentation. We have 3 speakers, which I will be introducing in a few minutes. And this event is being recorded and made available for on-demand viewing. I'd like to encourage attendees to ask questions about the presentation. We will be reviewing those questions submitted in chat and presenting them on your behalf during the Q&A portion of today's webinar. My name is Kyle Hunter. I'm responsible for ObjectRocket's product marketing, and I will be your host for today's event. I'm very pleased to introduce our speakers today, Erik, a developer advocate with Parse, Melissa, an ObjectRocket data specialist, and Andy, an ObjectRocket data engineer. Welcome to you all, and thanks for being with us. I look forward to your presentation. So Erik, with that, I'm going to let you take over and begin the presentation as soon as you're ready to go.
Cool, thanks Kyle. And hi everybody who's here attending the webinar. As you folks know, we announced the shutdown of Parse earlier this year in January. A lot of folks were upset. I was too. It was quite a surprise for me. I also have built a bunch of apps on Parse. With that announcement, we talked that we would keep the Parse servers running until January 2017. However, when we discussed within our team, we wanted to figure out ways to help our customers that really care about their application. And if you're in this webinar listening and learning about ObjectRocket, that to us means that you care about your app. What we've been suggesting to folks that have apps built on Parse is that they migrate their database off. We've talked about different ways to do this, and we released a tool in the Parse admin dashboard to allow you to migrate off. The folks at ObjectRocket can share with you how you should do that using their system. Beyond that, once you've migrated your data off, we want you to think about moving off your application logic, push notifications, and some of your, where your files are being stored around July 28th. So that's a general idea for getting your application off of Parse and onto your own hardware or hosted hardware with folks like ObjectRocket. When you're migrating your database off, you should consider the different ways to estimate how much storage you're going to need. ObjectRocket will go into more detail outlining how to do this. There's a lot of different options, but generally speaking, the way that Parse stores data in our system is via RocksDB, which is a highly, highly compressed format. If you were to use the basic storage engine on Mongo, you'd probably expect somewhere between 3 to 5 times the storage. So when you're trying to estimate how much space it should take, using mmap, it's going to be a lot more. However, ObjectRocket has options to reduce the amount of storage needed, and that could help you save a lot of money. When you're migrating off, it's going to be important for you folks to consider where Parse stores all the data. So Parse stores all data currently in AWS US East. What this means is it's all stored in North Virginia on the East Coast. If you were to launch an instance that isn't on the East Coast, you may not be able to fully migrate your data off if that application is really active. So if you have a lot of people using your app, it's going to be best for you to stick on the East Coast and then figure out different ways to migrate. If you want to migrate to Asia or you want to migrate somewhere else, you can do that after the fact, but I wouldn't do it for the first migration. Depending on the size of your application, depending on how much data you have, depending on how big your indexes are, it could take anywhere from less than an hour or several gigabytes of storage to multiple days if that storage is somewhere beyond a couple hundred gigabytes, which is pretty common for some of our really big applications. For everybody else, it would probably take less than a couple hours. And the thing about migration is you control when that happens. So we have a tool that basically copies the data from our servers to wherever you tell us to store it. If it's ObjectRocket, then we will copy that data over. And then you get, once that data is completely copied over, you have 24 hours to confirm and finalize that step. Some people don't do this. Some people make sure and double check and make sure that all the data that they've copied over is exactly how they expect. And then from that point on, they can confirm. If you don't confirm within 24 hours, you're going to have to redo the migration step. And it's relatively painless. You copy in the string provided by ObjectRocket, the data gets copied over, and once it's done, you just say, you just confirm or you don't. And once you do this, though, it is a one-way trip. There's no easy way to move back into Parse. And the reason that we do this is we want to make sure that you are firm with your decision to move off. And once you've done that, you have all the tools at your disposal to increase performance, modify your indexes, and all that sorts of good stuff. So that being said, we've also announced open sourcing of Parse Server. So once you've got your data off, you can also move your application off. The current Parse Server repo on GitHub has, I think, 7,000, maybe nearing 8,000 stars. It's very, very active. Check it out on github.com/parseplatform, Parse Server. It's going to be important that if you intend on keeping your app running, you should move your application logic. And Parse Server allows you to do this with the least amount of changes to your code and almost no changes to your mobile logic. Other than that, we've also released some additional functionality. This slide is a little out of date, but we've released the dashboard. So if you're worried about having access to the dashboard is now open source. You can use that with Parse Server and ObjectRocket data to be able to access your data in a format that you're used to. It also allows push notifications. So if you have or use push notifications, you can use a simple push mechanism for sending those things out without having to switch anywhere else. And we also offer different storage options. So you can move your files that you may be storing on Parse to your own location. I think ObjectRocket or Rackspace has a storage solution that could be a possible solution for you folks if you have or care about storing data. And then there's a bunch of other stuff that we release. Local environments by one of our community members and a bunch of other stuff. I think we just also announced something called Parse Live Queries. A lot of really, really cool stuff. So the GitHub repo is very active. Check it out. Listen to and ask questions regarding how to migrate your data off in terms of size of expectations. And I think just get active with the Parse community. We are here to help you folks. We want to make Parse Server yours, and now that we've open sourced it, it actually is the community. So with that, I'm going to hand it over back to Rex to ObjectRocket, and I'll sit in the questions area to answer anything I can. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much, Eric. Appreciate it. So this is Melissa Weil. I am part of the ObjectRocket team here at Rackspace. There we go. So I've been working quite a bit with a lot of the customers who've been migrating from Parse to ObjectRocket, and we've actually noticed quite a few challenges that tend to fit into these 5 different buckets. So one of the first ones that we've noticed, one of the most important, have been scaling. That's been one of the top challenges, particularly with MongoDB. Mongo has been known in the past to be difficult to scale in other environments, so that tends to be a top challenge when you're migrating from Parse. Also, MongoDB is a relatively newer database technology, which means that finding resources to manage that environment can be difficult and pretty expensive. Also, transitioning from Parse API to Mongo has been a challenge for some. Hosted Parse Server setup and config can be a bit daunting. Also, downtime is an important concern. Since the application data is so critical to your business, that you can't risk the downtime at all or losing any of that data. Bottlenecks, scalability, anything that can impact that performance, those are also a really, really top concern that we've seen with people migrating from Parse. So here's my question for you. I'm hoping for a little audience participation. So here's a poll question. It's on the screen right now. And the question is, what are the challenges that you're facing or have faced migrating with the migration from Parse? So if you could go ahead and answer, I'd love to see some of the responses. I'll give you a second here, but hopefully some of the highlights and the challenges I highlighted in the last slide make a little bit of sense here. I'll give it a minute. All right. Wow, okay, MongoDB expertise. That is the #1 challenge with the migration with Parse. Also estimating database size, then managing Parse Server, and then those of you who haven't migrated. So we're actually going to be, it's slowly changing, even better. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about some of the MongoDB expertise and what we can provide here at ObjectRocket. But thank you for participating. I appreciate it. So we'll get into the technical specifics on how the actual migration is going to work, but I did want to highlight a customer that we not only helped migrate, but we were actually able to improve their performance and even clean up their Mongo environment overall. So Brian over at Smooch Labs has been a wonderful advocate for ObjectRocket. What he's really appreciated is the value that our managed service can provide for him and his team. And we actually have been working with Brian for quite some time now, and he's not sure if you're familiar with JSwipe, which is an application that's, he's one of the co-founders of that. So who is ObjectRocket? We believe that application developers shouldn't have to worry about their databases. That's basically our bottom line. We strive to make developers' lives easier and to allow them to focus on their business and their applications and not the database. What is the platform? What is ObjectRocket? We provide a fully managed, purpose-built, intelligently automated MongoDB, Elasticsearch, and Redis platform. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but basically, we pride ourselves in managing NoSQL technologies, of which we're going to be expanding into other newer technologies as well. And every instance actually comes with our fanatical support that Rackspace is known for. We provide specialized expertise around these NoSQL technologies, and also 24/7, 365 customer service. So our fanatical support, I'm sure some of you are familiar with Rackspace in general. It's been part of our DNA since 1999. And basically, to really sum that up, we will manage your database so that your developers and you can focus on your core application. That's how we help customers. And with that, I am going to hand it over to Andy. He's going to provide a little bit of overview on the architecture and the migration.
Thanks, Melissa. So in terms of MongoDB architecture, you're going to get basically the same design as what the database looks like on Parse right now. So you're going to get a fully HA database with multiple copies of your data, and we're going to provide you with backups and the monitoring and management of that database. Along with that, one of the things that we do is that we basically make it easy. Like Melissa said, we want developers to be able to develop and not worry about managing the database. We provide you with a fast database. We use, the fastest storage possible, and we have our platform set up to be able to scale. Whether you need to scale vertically, maybe you can't take advantage of some of the sharding functionality in Mongo, or horizontally via sharding. As well, we have everybody available to you, anything from DBAs to data engineers like myself, to operations folks that can help with anything that you need help with. And we have 24/7, around the clock, also global support, because we have a few engineers in London as well. And we also have the ability to kind of help out with running the Parse Server with Rackspace AWS. Not that we will run it for you, but we can help you with the configuration, make sure that the connect strings are set up the way that you need them, and we can troubleshoot that connectivity to the database. Talking a little bit more about the database size, going back to what Erik mentioned earlier, when you do move off onto a storage engine, kind of the default for Mongo, you will see an increase. But at ObjectRocket, we use the WiredTiger storage engine. And it's very similar to RocksDB, which is what is in use by Parse right now. And we've seen up to 70% compression on a lot of the data sets that we've put into WiredTiger. So the instances that you're going to get with ObjectRocket are going to be using WiredTiger, so we can try and help maintain that compression that you're seeing on Parse. So that's a little thing to note. Of course, the compression does vary based on the data size. So depending on the number of keys, the size of the keys, stuff that's being stored in the database, it could vary on compression, but looks pretty good at around 60 to 70% from what we've seen. For the Parse Server deployment, there's a couple of different options that we worked with providers on to kind of help make that part easier. Since we manage the database for you, understanding that running Parse Server may not be an easy thing, we do have an automated template on the Rackspace cloud servers where you can spin up the latest version of Parse Server. And it will do the spin up for you. The only thing that needs to be done is configuring the database and your parse keys, application keys in there. For the Karina platform is a platform at Rackspace that's built off of a containerization mindset like Docker and Kubernetes. And there's a Parse Docker file template that you can use for deploying that. We recommend using that for kind of like your dev and test environment. It's really easy for you to spin up and do some testing there. As well as the AWS EC2 instances would be a great option for you to deploy that. A lot of that is going to be manual, but we do have a team at Rackspace, a fanatical AWS team, that can help with doing some of the support of the infrastructure there. So here's a little bit more to outline some of the options like we talked about. The cloud servers is just going to be as simple as going into those templates, which I'm going to show off in a demo here shortly. The Karina side, there's going to be some links in there for some of the images that were mentioned, and we do have some documentation up pretty soon on how to deploy the Parse Server, as well as the Amazon Web Services and some information about our fanatical AWS team and some of the help that they can provide. So to kind of go a little bit further, a breakdown of what we support, ObjectRocket is going to do everything database for you, everything. And we can help with query optimization, we can help with backups and monitoring and everything. Make sure that you don't have to worry about any of that. You can just kind of point your application to it, get your Parse Server pointed to it, and we will manage the rest for you. And if you have any questions or concerns, you can reach out to us via support. And like I said, data engineers and DBAs are available around the clock, and this is what we do. This is our everyday, so we'll be able to help you with anything that you have questions with. For the Parse Server tier, just like the options that I mentioned previously, deploying that and setting that up is going to be through one of those different services, but the database in the back end of your Parse API is going to be something that you don't have to worry about. So with that, I'm going to move into the demo. Go ahead and share here. So we're going to start off from the ObjectRocket control panel. So once you log into your ObjectRocket account, you'll see that you are taken straight to your instances section. And here I have created a Parse instance already, but I'm going to run through kind of how you would create a new instance if you needed to. You just basically would click Create Instance. You're going to type the name that you want to call your instance there. Select a size. We have 5, 20, and 50 gig plans right now. And then you just go ahead and hit the Create button. But since I already have one, I'm going to back out of this and show what the Parse Server itself actually looks like, the Parse instance. So here you're going to see information about it. The first thing you're going to want to do is create a database, and this is what we're going to migrate the data from Parse to. And you can name the database whatever you want to name it. I recommend naming it something similar to the application name, so that way it's intuitive for you and your team to be able to see which database is for which application. And if you notice at the bottom, the parse migration string will actually fill out for you. So all you have to do is copy that, and when you add the database, it will be all set and ready to go. And that connection string is going to be exactly the information that we need to transition over and start the migration of our Parse application to the Mongo database on ObjectRocket. So from the Parse Dashboard, this is going to look very familiar to a lot of you. You would just go into the application that you want to migrate, and you're going to go to the application settings and scroll down a little bit. You'll see that there is a migrate option to an external database. And once you click on that, it's going to ask you for the database connect string, which is properly formatted from that database add we just did. And once we put that together, migration will start, and you can track the progress of it here. So while this is running, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the Rackspace cloud side. So this is a Rackspace cloud account, and this is where we can go ahead and deploy the actual template for Parse Server on a Rackspace cloud server. So under the orchestration section, there are stack templates, and we have a stack template set up for Parse Server. So we're going to go ahead and go into that. There's some details about Parse Server. The key is the documentation tab is going to have everything that you need to know about setting up, starting and stopping the Parse API service on the server, how to configure it, how to log into it. And under the Actions menu, you can actually create the stack from the template. And you're going to select the options. Again, naming it, probably want to name it something similar to your application so it's intuitive to you. And using your site domain and your Parse admin email. This is going to be the URL of your application, or any domain that you have set up associated with the application would be key here. And once you go ahead and create that stack, this is what it looks like. When you go ahead and go into your stack, you can see information about it. It's going to take it a second to load. And once everything is loaded up, you'll be able to see you have your region, you have information about your Parse server, your Parse API URL. You're going to be able to add any of the API endpoints that are after api.parse.com to the end of that string. And then you're going to take the primary server public IP from here, and we're going to copy it, because one of the things that we do for security over at ObjectRocket is that we do not allow all connections from everywhere into your database. You have to whitelist IPs. So we're going to take that server IP and add it to the ACLs for the instance to make sure that it's allowed to connect. And once we hit the add ACL entry, it will be added, and now our Parse server will be able to communicate with our database. So at this point, we should be pretty close to finishing the migration of our Parse application. But the stack instructions are going to be listed down there as well. So now that our Parse application is finished, like Erik said, we can either finalize the migration, which will mean that we will not be able to move back to Parse if we need to, but we'll be fully cut over, and the Parse API will be done, and will be pointed to ObjectRocket. You can stop the migration and restart it, or you have 24 hours that it will sit here and stay in sync until you can make the decision. So those are just one of the options that we have available to you to be able to migrate your application. And I think with that, we are going to turn it back over to Melissa.
Yeah, great. That was great, Andy. Thank you so much. So we've been partnering with Parse since the announcement was made in January, and they've been instrumental in helping us develop this solution so that the migration is as simple as possible and that the environment is optimized for Parse specifically. And we provided a few options for Parse customers administratively. We have compressed and uncompressed options using the different Mongo engines, as Andy was talking about. So we do have mmap engines and then WiredTiger engines. And as Andy alluded to, WiredTiger is similar to RocksDB. That's our compression engine. So we can actually help evaluate which option is best for you. We typically recommend WiredTiger if you have larger size, but we can also help make that determination if you need it. We've also provided special pricing specifically for Parse customers. So If you sign up by April 15th, for 1 whole year, you'll get 15% off your instance. And we did this partly because we really value our relationship with Parse, and we want to make sure that we provide a solution that can provide value to Parse customers. So please be aware that this is by April 15th. After that, the prices will go to full price. So we also have the pricing on the web page. It's on our ObjectRocket.com web page. If you have any questions or if you want to see a little bit more detailed, we can also discuss after this webinar. You can reach out to our team and we'll have contact information if you want to go through specific pricing scenarios for your databases. One second, sorry. And also in regards to administrative and the 15% off discount, so we also provide a 30-day free trial. It's not easy to manage or optimize MongoDB, especially trying to navigate all this sort of evolution of all these platforms. So between scaling, upgrading, deploying, supporting, migrating, tuning these Mongo workloads, your developer time can be utilized far more efficiently if they can focus specifically on development and that we can manage these environments for you. Again, you also get, as Andy said, access to DBAs with real experience running Mongo at scale. So these are large enterprise environments. We can also help optimize your database workloads on our purpose-built platform. So the hardware is purpose-built for Mongo. And then again, we're offering this 30-day free trial because we know the difficulty and challenge that you're facing right now, particularly with the announcement. And that's partly why we're offering the 30-day free trial, so that you can evaluate our solution before you make a decision. We want to make sure that you feel comfortable using ObjectRocket and it's the right solution for you. So again, that information is on the website. You can see the URL there, objectrocket.com/parse. There is a link on the front web page as well. So just to summarize, again, the key takeaways, 15% off of these instances, these MongoDB instances for Parse customers exclusively if you sign up by April 15th. And then again, per Erik, you do need to move the data off by April 28th. So that's a very important date. We are ready for your environments and your data. So please keep that in mind, that we can let us know if you do need help with migration as well. Storage could also run a little bit higher than what's displayed in your dashboard. Keep that in mind. Our team can help evaluate your data and help you make a decision if you need it in regards to which engine is best for you. We also have direct connect into AWS if needed. That's very important. And then consider hosting Parse Server with Rackspace Cloud and Karina. Those options are available, and we can walk you through those options in more detail if needed. And then migrate your Parse users and your files soon. So these dates are coming up, and the migration is moving fast. So we are here to help you.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. So before we get started with the Q&A portion, I want to make sure everybody sees the current slide with contact info for all of our speakers today. Please take it down so you can ask questions that may come up after the webinar. And moving on to the questions. So for our first question, does ObjectRocket help with the entire migration from Parse, or is that an extra cost?
So we will help with the database migration from Parse to ObjectRocket. Like you saw in the demo, it's fairly easy. The tool is pretty automated. Outside of that, once you get that database moved over and you're kind of just running on the Parse hosted API for a while, we can help with making sure that the database connectivity to the Parse Server is functioning as expected, and help with doing some testing from the API level whenever you get Parse Server created. And then after that, kind of the last phase would be if you don't feel like you want to run Parse Server, for a very long time in the future, and you want to maybe kind of figure out how to build your own API for your application or something like that, we can help make sure that the queries that you guys are putting through for the application are optimized and running as efficiently as you'd want them to.
Yeah, and in regards to cost, that is all included in those prices. So we don't charge extra for any of those services.
Okay, great. So moving on to the second question, does ObjectRocket provide support for other databases?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'll let Andy provide his feedback there. But yes, we do provide support for quite a bit of databases, not just on the ObjectRocket platform. So ObjectRocket specifically, we provide support for MongoDB, Redis, and Elasticsearch. We also do have some big data products, so we have Hadoop and Spark products as well. And then on the relational database side, there's quite a few databases that are covered on that side, so from Oracle to Microsoft and sort of the gamut of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Just with everything that we do, a lot of it is, like Melissa said, Mongo, Redis, and Elasticsearch, but the same teams that support those also support the Rackspace data stores, as in Hadoop, and we also have hosted Cassandra that we do as well. And then we have a full DBA team that helps with Oracle, MS SQL, and MySQL support. So.
Okay, great. So next question, what happens if my instance outgrows its original size?
So if your instance starts to get close to the max of the plan size, we will work with you to see if you're a good candidate for doing something like horizontal scaling in Mongo using sharding, or if it's better for you from a performance perspective that we kind of go up to the next plan size. So let's say you create a 5 gig instance to get it to about 4.9 gig, and you don't know what you're going to do. All the data is important. There's nothing that you can prune. Then we would look to either see if you should move to a 20 gig plan size, or if you're a good candidate for sharding, something that our DBAs can really look into. They can kind of give you some advice on what that looks like and how we can help. And with each shard that we add, basically going to add another 5 gig to your instance, so you can go from 5 gig to 10 gig to 15 and so on. So even if you get close, we're here to help, and we've done this for a lot of our customers.
Okay, next one, in the event we need to recover a database, how does the process perform?
So in recovery of a database, so we take nightly backups of every instance that's on our platform. And in the event that you need something restored or somebody accidentally deletes a record, we can assist with restoring from those backups that we have. And additionally, we can also help with sending those backups to either Rackspace Cloud Files or Amazon S3. And we can do that in a nightly cadence like we do with backups, so that way you have a copy of the data. So if you need to go through and look through that data to look for a record or something that may have changed and you wanted to see what it looked like from a few days ago, we can help with that as well.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Do we have a 1 gig plan or lower than 5 gig option for InMap?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Right now, we don't have any options lower than 5 gig. However, one of the reasons we do that is because this is specifically optimized for Parse. So there was a lot of work on our side with our development team to engineer this environment, which is one of the reasons why we're not able to provide lower than 5 gig right now. Not to say that we might not offer it in the future, but as of right now, it's not available.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. What is the suggested configuration for running cloud code, since Parse Server does not handle this?
I can answer this. So Levi, this is Erik from Parse. If you're using Parse Server, depending on where you're running it, you should be able to just run the code via some sort of cron job or something like that using some a module or package off of the internet. The reason we don't support Cloud Code is all it is it's JavaScript. So you can figure out a way to run that either periodically using a cron job or change your code to run it differently. You need it to be run on demand, but not really a ObjectRocket question, but for a Parse Server. So.
Okay, thanks, Erik. What if we want to migrate from ObjectRocket to other service in the future?
So we can help with, like I said, we take nightly backups. What we do is we can provide you with the most recent dump of your data, usually using tools like MongoDump or Mongo Export if you're thinking about potentially moving it into another data store similar to MySQL or something like that. So we can provide JSON dump of the data from Mongo, and from there you can take it and put it on self-hosted if you'd like to, or some other platform like that.
Yeah, and we recognize that everyone, that there may be circumstances where you do need to move off our platform, so we make that as easy as possible for you.
Okay, great. So for the next one, we use Parse SDK and CocoaPods in our Xcode project. Does that need to be removed, changed, or left alone?
I'll take this one. So Kareem, I sent you a chat comment reply to your question. If you take a look at the Parse Server GitHub project, there's instructions for setting how you point your SDK to your own API, your own Parse Server. So take a look at that. It should be really straightforward. If CocoaPods doesn't work, you can basically use the library from the GitHub repo.
Okay, great. Thanks, Erik. What non-geo co-located deployment architectures are available for the database infrastructure?
Erik, is there someone else that you might be able to mention here?
The question is, that's kind of like to be honest, that's like a good problem to have. If you need to be located in multiple data availability zones or whatnot, this is probably not the right place for that answer. That's more of an advanced database question. I don't know who does provide this, but it would be probably something you'd have to engineer yourself. You'd have to create, multiple Mongo database instances that send data to other instances. But I don't know of anybody that provides this out of the gate. Maybe something that someone would consider though.
Yeah, so we do have some ability to do some geo, but it says non-geo. But we do have some geo dispersed options that we've been working on, and we have a few customers using, but not co-located. It's going to be within our infrastructure. As for co-located, I think there's a lot of that's going to be hiring Mongo expertise in-house to kind of help with running that. So.
Okay, so for the next and so far final question submitted, regarding the push notification in files and cloud code that we use in Parse, would it be the same in ObjectRocket?
Okay, I'll take this. So Rahul, for when you migrate your database off and Parse and onto ObjectRocket, this additional code doesn't need to change. So your push notifications don't need to change, your files don't need to change, your cloud code doesn't need to change. But it will need to change in July. So you give yourself a couple months, get your data off, and then figure out what your next steps are going to be. Some people have decided to rewrite their application. Some people have decided to use Parse Server. It really comes down to what your choices are. There's a lot of options for you can use a push notification thing that we open source. You can now switch where you store your files. There may be some code being written by folks at Rackspace to make it easy to store your files on their infrastructure. But nothing changes once you do the switch. All that changes is that your database isn't stored at Parse, and you can do different things. You can actually directly write to the database. You can directly change your indexes. whereas with Parse, we do it all for you, which is good and bad because we index everything, but that becomes really, really expensive. And so if you have stuff or new features that you want to release, you have a lot more control if you're on hosted infrastructure like ObjectRocket.
Okay, we got one more question in. What exactly will Parse Server continue to do once the database has migrated?
Hi, Lori. So the Parse Server is an open source version of Parse, and it will function similarly. It doesn't do 100%. It can't do 100% of the stuff that the current Parse core infrastructure does, but it covers majority of all the functionality, and a lot of stuff is being added. So what will happen is once you've migrated your data, and then once you switch your application to use Parse Server, it will, instead of going to Parse API, it will go to your API, and that's the biggest change. It's going to be different code running on your infrastructure, but I would say that would be step 2 after step 1 being migrating your data off.
Okay. I think that's our last question for today. Thanks to the audience for some great questions. If there are any that are submitted that I missed or that we missed, we'll make sure to capture those and send them to the speakers, so they'll make sure to follow up afterwards. Okay, this brings our webinar to a close. I want to thank Parse for their sponsorship and our speakers for their insight on this topic. Look forward to talking to everyone soon. One more thing, just to make sure everyone is aware, objectrocket.com/parse. You can go there for more information. Thank you again.